Alright, this month has been crazy in a good way. I've read 14 books so far, and there's still a few days left in July, so I'll probably do 8 books in this first part and do a second part. The first book this month is called Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jayne Allen. This is a 3-part series, and this is the first book in the series. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. For me, it was very melodramatic. If you've ever seen a Tyler Perry movie, and his name is online a lot right now for this movie, he has out, I've not watched it. They're very dramatic and not in a sometimes not in an enjoyable way. For me, this book was good in that it gave the perspective of a successful black woman, a young black woman in her early 30s or in her 30s, and she's having challenges. She does well at work, she has a steady job, but she's having trouble in her personal life, and so it gets a little bit just dramatic. I think there's this scene in it where she gets pulled over by police, and she's describing what she recalls of some issues of police brutality in the States. And I think while it is socially current and apt, I thought the way it was done in the book was a little bit overblown, but then it kind of tied back into a scene later on in the book, and so I saw how it was used, but I just couldn't. It's not the kind of book that changes your life, but if you want to, maybe as a 30-something woman going through life and it's hard and you're struggling, it might resonate. Here's Banana Cat sitting with us for a little bit while we talk. Alright, the second book this month is The Fiancé Dilemma by Elena Armas. I gave this a 4 out of 5. It was almost a 3 out of 5 for me, because out the gate, this book, the female character was a little bit annoying. Now, mind you, I have nothing against people going through things and struggling with life, with being a young woman. And this lady, okay, so let's start. She has walked off, what do you call it when you're getting married and you leave the person on the altar 4 times already, okay, for different reasons, some valid, some maybe not so valid. I mean, her feelings are valid, so I guess all valid, right? But this lady has done this to herself, fine, made her decisions, fine, she's happy, she's living her life in this small town, and this man who is her father, she's finding out he's her father. So this is the second book in a series, and apparently this series is about this politician who had 3 children, or had children. They seem to be girls. So the previous book was about her half sister, and now this is her book. And so he's I guess trying to make connections with these women. So he's got a staff member who comes to this lady's small town and says to her, hey, we're trying to get you, they're basically trying to not necessarily form a bond, but get the dad in contact with his daughters and form some sort of relationship. And so somehow this girl ends up telling the lady she's affianced to someone, and the fiance is her sister's friend who is turning up coincidentally on her doorstep. Is it confusing? Yes. Maybe I'm not telling him right, but the long story short is she basically coerces this man into being her fiance, and he's a little bit confused at first and almost refuses, but then he goes through with it. And I'm not blaming him, I'm blaming her, okay? And this is not being not a girl's girl, this is about being ridiculous and manipulative, okay? I didn't like that, and for that reason, the start of the book, I was just like, what is this? And this is not the first book of hers that has made me, I think the American Roommate Experiment, it also started very whiny. So the female characters for me, they tend to start from their perspective, and sometimes the perspectives are dubious, okay? I don't like it. But anyways, they're pretending to be affianced, and of course you know how it is, so they're faking it, and then they fall in love and all of that. And I think in the end the book was fine, like it went to a 4 star for me, but I was still not forgetting how they got to that point. And I think at the end the guy stole the show with his he had like a big kind of public declaration of love and all of that, even despite the girl like owning up to being kind of trash for what she did, and you know, him falling in love with her and stuff like that. And he even detailed how with little tidbits he learned about her from her sister before this couple had even met, that he, you know, basically knew that she could be the one, and that made it like the romance that could be positive. But I'm telling you people, I couldn't get behind the whole deception. So in the end, the guy saved it, the whole romance, and Elena Armas can write. This book had a scene in it that was good, a spicy scene that was unexpected. You know, sometimes you've seen one, you've seen them all, and there was one, they were kind of in a public space, and I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, so it was nice. It was a good romance. I think I was just a little bit annoyed with the premise, you know. Third book this month is A Gentleman's Gambit by Evie Dunmore, and this is book number 4 of the League of Extraordinary Women. So this book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I almost gave it 4, but it fell down to a 3 because of the ending. The ending felt a little bit abrupt for me, considering that we spent a lot of time with these characters and we're not always owed an epilogue. But I think that the way, before we even got to the epilogue, there was just a really quick wrap up of the story at the end. And I don't know if that had something to do with how long the book took to come out. Apparently it took an extra 2 years. It took 2 years from the last installment till this one to come out. And just a quick look up showed that the author had some challenges or something, which these things happen. But I guess, you know, sometimes when a book takes longer, you expect that it's gonna be written well, and not seem abrupt at the end. So anyway, it definitely was unique. You know, it was a good romance. It had this character who's the daughter of a scholar. She herself is a scholar, and this was back in the time of women's suffrage in Britain, and they're Scottish aristocracy, lower level, so she's technically a lady, and the guy is a thief. He's from one of the, I want to say, it's Middle Eastern countries, and he is a businessman, but among other things, he comes to countries and makes business arrangements, and he also makes arrangements to repatriate stolen items that are stolen from their region. So he's from wherever the Ottoman Empire is, and I'm blanking right now what part of the Middle East those countries are. I want to say maybe like Lebanon. Please pardon my ignorance and forgetfulness. And so they steal a lot of there were a lot of important pieces, items, cultural works were stolen from that area, and so he would they're in the textile, his family's in the textile business, and they would go to major ports to make trades, but also he would orchestrate for the stealing back of things that got stolen. So in this case, because the lady Catriona works in a university, and there are historians, she's partly like a linguist, and there's historians there and so on. He basically came to steal something back and from her dad, or from someone who's in a relationship with her dad, work relationship, and along the way, you know, they meet each other, and she's on the autism spectrum, so I liked that as well, that it showed a character. I enjoy when they write characters who aren't, you know, normative, or, you know, they're a little bit divergent from, whether it's neurodivergent or just different, you know, they might have a disability or something. I enjoy reading character. I'm sure the average character is fine, but I like when romance is for everyone, and so I really enjoyed that aspect as well. And so she's a little bit different, and I think it was a creatively written book in that he's also different, you know. He's traditional, where he comes from. Someone they choose to marry him to someone, and you know, there was a little touch of him talking about he was uh, free spirit. What's the word when people don't? There's a phrase when people are like what they did in the 70s, and they were very free with their love and open. Like he practiced that for a little bit as well, and there were just random things in there, like her being a very conservative woman in a sense, but ending up with like a nipple ring. And the opening scene was like him coming upon her naked as she was bathing out in the river somewhere, and it wasn't like trashy, it was expertly done, I think. But there were so many, if I told you those things individually and they're in one story, it would seem very random. Like, how are all these things? Like, she speaks multiple languages, including the language that he speaks, which is not, you know, Latin based, which are typically more taught, French and Spanish back in that time, and even Latin. And she spoke, you know, his language, and that was a special bonding thing for them too. They could communicate. So for all those reasons, it was special. And like I said, it was really on the way to being a 4 for me, and I really enjoyed the other installments, the earlier installments of these books. But this one, for me, I don't know, the end, it really just kind of brought it down. It was strong enough to bring it down to a 3 for me. So yeah, those are my feelings on this book. So book number 4 for me this month is by Goodkeeping. It's called Organizing Your Life. Organize Your Life. I actually have a physical copy of this book. I got it from the library. This is what it looks like. It's got nice photos there, and it's got some pretty cool imagery in there, as well as the text. So it's pretty awesome. Shout out to the library in Charlottesville. So it's got different themes, and it's got different sections. It's got, you know, like a how to get started, which was really nice. What I liked about this book, if you've ever watched that Marie Kondo show where she helps people to organize, helps people to pare down some of the things in their homes, and, you know, decide what to keep, what to give away. This one is really nicely constructed. So it's got some do's and don'ts, and it's really nicely compartmentalized. Some of the times when you're looking for help with books, it can feel very overwhelming because it's a lot of prose and it's a lot of block text. And what you see from this book is that it kind of breaks it down into sections for you, so it's a little bit easier to digest. So I really like this. I think it's the kind of book you could keep, and it's got some really nice tips for like daily. Everybody, you know, you have to straighten up every day. Maybe you have something weekly and something quarterly that you do for major cleaning, and I just thought it was a really nice, helpful for anyone who's gonna have a home at some point, or, you know, their own space, that you could have some tips. And what I really like is just, it's got, of course, aesthetically pleasing photos that could also serve as decor inspiration. So I'm gonna return this to the library, but I'm actually thinking about getting a physical copy for myself. I think it would be worth it. And so yeah, this was a 3 out of 5 for me because it wasn't life-changing. I think it could be helpful. I don't think the tips are anything I didn't know before, but it's nice to have them in a neat package and in a hardcover format, and in a place that you could quickly grab to reference and put back. You know, put little sticky notes for your favorite sections. And it is something I would definitely use, especially for the sections with the if I get overwhelmed, I could really grab it and then start from there, you know. Book number 5 is called The Heiress Gets a Duke, and it's by Harper St. George, and this is book 1 in the Gilded Age Heiresses, and it's 1 of 4. Okay, so this book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Lots of 3 out of 5s this month. It was an okay start to the series, and I will read the other books in the series. I actually skipped from book 1 to book 4. I will read 2 and 3, but I believe I could borrow book 4 from the library, so I did. So anyways, this book is about an heiress, an American heiress, and in that specific time they were, there were a lot of aristocratic families that were getting poor because their spending habits outmatched their income, and they didn't believe in working, so they had to marry to get more money. And then the Americans wanted titles, British titles, to elevate their status in American and British society. So let's follow that case. There's a duke, and he was actually being encouraged to marry an heiress by his mother, and the younger, there was a girl who, there are two sisters actually, and the mother encouraged the younger daughter to marry this man. She was seen as, more beautiful, etc., etc., and maybe the older girl was a little bit more headstrong. And in the end, he met the older sister, and he wanted her, and he was like, nobody else will do. Of course, it's the same money, so the families were okay with it. Just a different sister, and so they got married, and I think it was an okay romance. I think she had a head for business, had a head for numbers, and he was able to allow her to, be who she was. And the thing is, how they met initially was he would box to get money. He would do underground boxing, or underground fights. And I thought that was definitely, I've read one or two books like that before, and I thought that's always like adds a little flair of danger to the romance, especially in the aristocracy, where for all intents and purposes, even if they look a little bit muscular, they're not expected to be brawling. And so that, makes it a little bit more interesting. And so I expected them. They met under those circumstances. She went to a fight with her friend, and he was fighting, and so I expected that to play a little bit more of a role in the romance. But they basically only met under those circumstances, and that was it. And so I was looking for a little bit more from this one, but again, it wasn't bad. I think it did the job what first in a series is supposed to do, which is to make you want to read the others. And one of the things it sets up is it starts with the older girl, her name's August. Her friend gets married off to a duke from England, who's like older than their respective fathers. And she wasn't happy. She cried as she walked down the aisle, and so she would also pull little stunts. She didn't want to get married at all. He kind of had to convince her, and he liked it. He liked when she pulled these little stunts to, kind of ward him off. And again, for all intents and purposes, it made you want to read the others. But sorry, I got sidetracked. So the friend ended up not having a second marriage, and we'll come to the friend ended up not having a happy marriage. She cried walking down the aisle, and that was like another further reason why August did not want to get married. And so this more so made you want to keep reading to see what happened to the other characters as well. And since the sister didn't get married this time, the younger sister, you expect that her story is going to come up. So yeah, that's all I'll say about this one. It was an okay read. Don't regret reading it. Don't think it changed my life. Those are pretty much what number 3 out of 5 ratings are for me. The book number 6 for me is I Do Not Come to You by Chance by, let me get it right, Adaobi Tricia Nwaubani, Nigerian author. This was a 4 out of 5 for me. Very good book. This book is a novel about a young man who is the Opara, which is the eldest son of a Nigerian family, and his parents have raised him to believe that education is his ticket to anything, out of any situation, etc. And they want him to be an engineer, and he goes to school for engineering. His father takes ill. His father worked a government job, which is a noble job, but it doesn't make a lot of money, of course. And so Kingsley is now his dad gets sick, he's having medical bills, the parents have very little savings, the mother's work. She was educated as well, which is how the parents got to meet. Not to meet, but how they got to be together, because anyways, it's in the book, but I won't say too much about it. But in the end, Kingsley could not get a job in his field, and this is the tale of many people in developing countries. It happens a lot, but also in developed countries. Sometimes you do your degree, and the job, even if it comes, takes a while to come. You exhaust whatever savings and goodwill you have, and it's a very frustrating process. And it turns out that Kingsley, in all of this, they had Kingsley's uncle, his mother's younger brother, is a scammer in Nigeria, and the book will tell you they call it 419. So they do telephone scams, they have elaborate schemes, and they call people, they send them emails, and they hook fish in, and the fish, usually it's some sort of, give us some amount of money and you will get 10 times as much money. Give us 20,000 US dollars, you will get 2 million, ridiculous sums. And so people fall for it for whatever reason, business people. And it's not just because it's coming from, it's coming from people who are pretend to be, important people in the country that they're from, but actually with corruption, they actually do have official letterheads, and it appears like official business. They set up elaborate schemes. And so Kingsley goes and he starts working, reluctantly mind you, he didn't want to, but he starts working with his uncle, and it takes him to places. He gets to travel because they go to meet with some of these people, and they come to do all of these transactions and stuff like that, getting visas done and stuff to go to these countries. And I don't want to give too much away. I think so far this is one of the most entertaining reads I've read this month. It is full of life lessons and cautionary tales, both for people who could potentially get scammed and people who, they walk the straight and narrow and it seems like nothing is working. At what point do you choose to become a criminal, to commit fraud, And it shows cautionary tales of, guys in their team who did it and went away and got caught, Mind you, the red flags were there, but still, it shows greed on both sides. Like, the people getting scammed are greedy, but also the people who are here, the people who are doing the scamming are greedy. It shows the mother, she didn't want to have anything to do with it when she realized what he was doing. And not to give too much away at the end, but basically a lot of the scammers, as they get into it, they legitimize in a sense. It's a smart thing to do, right? So as you're making crooked money, if you pour money into something legitimate, when people come to check in on you, you can say, here's the source of my income, or here is where I do legitimate business kind of thing. I have paperwork for it, I have licensing, I pay taxes, all of these things. And so I think this is just one of those books that really makes you think about your morals and what is right and what's wrong, but also if you're hungry, how long are you going to be hungry for? You know what I mean? So it also deals with a lot of times with morality. Religion comes into play. If you have a religious background, it's like what goes against your religious beliefs or not. And I just think it was really entertaining, and I just love nobody can Nigerians are so funny and so witty, and their metaphorization is on point. And the characters have ridiculous names, and I just like the scamming characters. They have names they go by, and it's just funny. And I think the narration, if you have a chance to listen to that, is really good. I always love when I'm not the native speaker of the book. The book is written in English, but if it's written by someone who is from another culture and they use their phrases in there, of course, so it's authentic, I love to listen to the narration so I know what it sounds like, how the names are pronounced, the different sayings and the intonations, and I really enjoyed that. So this book for me, 4 out of 5, and I would recommend this for fiction this month. Alright, so book number 7 for me. This was my first 5 out of 5 this month, and this is more biographical. So it's called It Goes So Fast, and those are punctuated with full stops in between. So it's called It Goes So Fast, The Year of No Do-Overs. So this is by this is by Mary Louise Kelly, and she's actually a reporter for NPR, which is an American nationally broadcasted radio station. And this book was, I didn't expect to like it this much. I literally came in, it was a blind read. I went to the library, it was on the shelf of new books, and I thought, okay, I have kids. What I saw was the cover. The cover I thought was really brilliant. So it showed, it showed the little baby shoes, and then it showed adults, or big cleats, and I knew immediately what it was about. It was about your kids growing up. And I thought to myself, well, I have kids, and they have activities, and I want them to grow up and grow up happy, and for us to have a good relationship. And I read this book thinking, well, maybe I'll just see another perspective of parenting. Even if I don't enjoy it, I'll learn something, or I'll have another perspective. I think perspective gives you a lot more. Anecdotes sometimes give you a lot more than a lesson, and if you can learn from anecdotes, great. So that was just my goal. And then when I did that, I listened to the book, and I am learning. So probably if you listen to NPR all the time, there are people who listen to it religiously, just so you listen to BBC, or you listen to any news station or any current affairs station. And so I didn't know this lady, but she was giving aspects of her life and aspects of her career. So it's biographical in that sense, but she did it so masterfully with talking about her kids. And so I don't think I've read a book like that was giving narrative interspersed with like chronological, some of it was chronological and some of it wasn't, but it was done so well. It wasn't frustrating. Sometimes they're bouncing back and forth on timelines, and it gets confusing, or it's frustrating, you can't follow. In it, she mentions as well that she's an author, so apparently she writes fiction. She writes suspense thriller type. I didn't know that going in, but I can see, not because of what she wrote, the content, but because of the way she was able to weave, her biography with almost like anecdotal lessons, right? And she talks about her career, and when she went to Iran, and when she spoke to important people in the news, and when the president or the former president called her names, and she talked about her mom and her relationship with her parents and her relationship with her kids, and by the end she talked about being divorced. Now mind you, she told the story so well, I expected it to be a happy ending. And even as she spoke about the fact that she got divorced, I didn't realize, it didn't feel like you're like, oh, that's so sad. I was expecting it to be a success story, but that's how well she wrote this. And I just think that it was really, really cool. Like I said, I just can't, and it's not the kind of book I feel like I need to read again. I think the reason I would read it again was if I were to try to write something like that, where I was going to bounce between different narratives or bounce between different plot lines, that I'd use that as a way to pace and a way to choose what goes where. And she broke the third wall a few times, or the fourth wall, whatever it is you call it, where you're watching the thing or reading the thing, but they're talking to you like, hey, yeah, so you might be wondering how I got here, that kind of thing. She even did that a couple of times, and it didn't come off as tacky or just weird. It was so effectively done, and I was surprised. I can't keep saying it, so I'd say if you had kids and I had to recommend if you ever think about the debate, it's always, especially for women, right, we tend to sacrifice a lot more, even when the men are great. When kids want their mom, they want their mom, and that's it. That's it, you're always a mom. It was really interesting. If you have kids, you might want to see the perspective of they only have this big tournament, that's their final senior year tournament, once in their life, you know what I mean? And yeah, you have a book deadline, or you have a trip to Iraq, and you're a reporter, and you've been building up to this. Do you give it up? Will you regret giving it up? Stuff like that, and those choices are yours to make. But it was really nice seeing a perspective, and sometimes you said, no, I didn't regret it, and sometimes it was like, yeah. I wish I had gone and done this, or I wish I hadn't done this, you know. So that was a good one for me. I was surprised. I'm going on and on about it, but I like being surprised in a good way, and that was a good surprise. Alright, so the final book, not that I read this month, but that I'm going to include in this part 1 of my reading wrap, is called The Duchess. The Duchess Takes a Husband, and this is number 4 in the 4 of 4 in the New Age Heiresses. This is number 4 of 4 in the Gilded Age Heiresses. So a couple books back, I talked about book number 1. I gave that a 3. I gave that a 3 out of 5. This one I gave a 4 out of 5. Alright, so this is the book that book 1 made me want to read. In book 1, the book started out with the character in this one. Her name is... The character in this one, her name is Camille. At the time, she was like 18. She was like 21 maybe younger. And they married her off to this old man, and he made her life terrible. He married her for her money. We find out in this book. We knew she was crying. She didn't want to get married to this person. She wanted to marry somebody younger. She wanted to have a choice. Now she goes, they marry, her family marries her off for the prestige. Basically sells her into marriage. And not knowing that he could be a little bit cruel. And so she didn't have an heir with him. She didn't have any children with him, and he also blamed her for that. Anyways, he dies. Good riddance. And now she kind of feels like she wants to take a lover. And there's this guy for this club that her friends' husbands are affiliated with. So remember, there's the first book. There are 2 books in between which I skipped. I have them. I haven't read them. I maybe will when I'm bored. I wanted definitely to skip to her story because she had a rough time of it. And so she likes this guy. She's already a duchess by marriage. They can't take this away from her. And she feels like she wants to actually enjoy life. She wants to know what pleasure feels like, etc. Love that. Love when a woman knows what she wants and she goes for it. And so she basically propositions this man. And he says no at first, and then he says yes, as they always do. And yeah, it's the story of their love unfolding, etc. And I feel like I always enjoy the like Gambling Den type books, because they have a little bit of the forbidden in them, where women weren't really allowed to go into those areas without it would ruin their reputations, etc. And she already had a hard time of it because she wasn't really accepted by society. She was the Duchess and she outranked most of them, but she wasn't really like welcome. And dallying with this guy wasn't gonna make it any better, you know what I mean? So I really enjoyed just the build of the romance, and them compromising, you know, her kind of going after what she wants, and him kind of being, he's the illegitimate son of an earl, right? So his brother is an earl, his dad was an earl, but he was born out of wedlock to the earl and someone else, and so he's dealing with that as well and what that means for him. And in the end, you know, they get married. The book is called The Duchess Takes a Husband. So, you know, they actually get married in the end, and they have their happily ever after. And I think, you know, we read romances for happily ever after, and I think knowing what she went through, that makes it even not just, okay, yay, they're in love, whatever, life is great, but she literally gets to undo a lot of her trauma or work on it with somebody who cares about her. So yeah, that was a 4 for me. And I think, I don't know what it says about a series when maybe the best book is the last one. I guess if you're building up to it, it keeps you reading. But if you're like, oh man, why can't all the stories be this good? So just a quick preview. So I'm gonna do the other books soon. The other books coming up are Interior Chinatown, Come As You Are, Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, Highland Justice, Assistant to the Villain, Crying Wolf, and I will likely finish Yinka, Where Is Your Husband, and David Nichols, You Are Here. Possibly 2 others. So that's what we have to look forward to. And I'll see you in a couple days.